Ladies and gentle kaiju, I have got a list of things to talk about in episode 11. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are taking a fully spoilery look at Kaiju number 8, episode 11. And we are going to be getting right into the spoilers, so I am going to give you a chance to click away now. Click on the link below the videos to get yourself a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird, Let's Work It Out, Short, Absurd Science Fiction Stories. So much was changed in this episode, but ultimately very little was changed. In the manga, this episode was focused nearly in the material that's covered in this episode focused mostly on Kafka's perspective. We only caught glimpses of what was going on in the heads of the other Defense Force members. In this one, we get a much broader view, which is consistent with the anime's theme of making subtle changes to perspective to put the focus more on the cooperative aspect of how the Kaiju Defense Force brings down these giant kaiju. In this sense, you have them reacting to the fact that not really that Kafka has revealed himself as a kaiju, there's a bit of the emotional reaction to that, but more reacting to the fact that Kafka has been arrested, restrained, and incarcerated by the Defense Force. Everyone is acutely aware that Kafka's life is on the line here, and they're all doing their best to help him in one way or the other. That is everybody in the third division. In the manga, we only got Mina telling Kafka that they were all working to help him. In the anime, we get to see Mina and Okunogi working together to gather the data that would defend Kafka. We get to see the two younger Defense Force officers who have the ability to do something. That is the one who was previously from the Defense Force and necessarily has contacts higher up in the military, and the rich boy who has contacts way up in the business industry, both of them reaching out or attempting to reach out to whoever they can to see if they can swing some high-level political power to protect Kafka. There were even some things that were left permanently unsaid, simply implied in the manga, that are outright stated in the anime. In that scene where they're in the office with Mina, she's telling them the rookies are going to be split up to go train at other bases. At the time this released in the manga, I did a whole theory video about how there was probably a much darker, more sinister reason that these particular 4 rookies were being split up. These were Kafka's 4 closest friends. The Defense Force knew this, and they are the 4 who, if there was going to be trouble caused, they would be causing it. So it was pretty obvious from implication that the Defense Force wanted these 4 specifically split up and sent away, whatever Mina might have said at the time. In the anime, they explicitly address this with the one who probably has the most political savvy, the rich business kid's son, saying, "You're actually splitting up anybody who's a close friend of Kafka, aren't you?" And Mina gives a nonsense political answer that amounts to, "This was being planned long before this." Overall, you just have these great expansions of scenes that isn't just Kafka locked in his cell, of the third division reacting to this. And it really, really works well with the themes of this anime, the themes of friendship and camaraderie, and the reality that there's not much that any one individual can do in this situation. And they quietly follow the rules because Kafka is profoundly terrifying. He's a kaiju at this point. While quietly following the rules, they make these little acts of defiance, of effort, all working together to try and keep Kafka alive. And we see that expanded a lot in the other members of the Defense Force. For the most part, not only do I understand why the anime made the changes, I appreciate them artistically. There were only 3 points, 2 of which are connected, that I didn't really like. In the manga, when we see Kafka in the third division custody room in the morning, It's Vice Captain Hoshina who is watching over him in the monitor room with the scientists. And in the manga, Vice Captain Hoshina just looked shattered, shell-shocked, sleep-deprived, standing there all bandaged up, this kind of dead look in his eyes, and you can just tell that he's running over in his mind again and again and again everything that had happened up to this point. And Kafka does not get a chance to talk to him, to apologize to him, before he gets shipped off to wherever the Defense Force is taking him. And that was a really poignant moment. Meanwhile, in the anime, you get the Vice Director Atami, the bald guy with the pouty lips, who is instead watching Kafka in that morning instead of Vice Captain Hoshina. And then Vice Captain Hoshina goes in with Mina to move Kafka, and Kafka tries to mutter out an apology. I think it kind of stole from the poignancy, and so that change, those two changes, not showing that Vice Captain Hoshina was watching over him the entire night, and then having Kafka try to make that apology then and there, I do think that was not a change for the better. The other thing, and I kind of understand why they did this, it was a time and a pacing thing. In the manga, we see Mina tell Kafka that she's gathering evidence for him, but in the anime, we see her gathering the evidence. Excellent show, don't tell. But then, when Kikoru goes in to confront her father, in the manga, the father stated, because we didn't get a chance to see it, that Captain Ishiro had gathered and submitted all of this evidence. And it gave this 3 beats to his response to her. So what happens in the manga is Kikoru comes in, addresses her father as an officer, and states her reason for being there. Kaiju number 8 saved my life. Please be lenient in your judgment. And she's trying to address him as an officer, and she fails utterly. He calls the girl, the officer, a fool, and he explains it by stating Captain Ishiro had already done this. Basically, he's pointing out to her that her actions are foolish. And then he says, "Are you just here to talk about your failures?" At which point he shows her the X-ray of Kafka's chest. We do get a much clearer view of the X-ray in the anime, which shows that the X-rays, when passing through the core, refracted differently than they would have in the tissue of a human heart. And that's why an X-ray, when all the other tests failed, that's why the X-ray was able to show that that was a core and not a heart, because the light wave X-rays passing through the core were diffracted differently than they would have passing through human tissue. Otherwise, it was the same shape and functioning the same way, so to all other effective tests, it would have appeared the same as a human heart. So after they have the conversation over that, it really shakes Kikoru, and he reminds her that, that's a kaiju, just like the one that killed your mother. Then you have the final beat. Kikoru, having been completely defeated in her attempt to face him as an officer of the Defense Force, lets her barriers down, turns around and says, "Daddy, I still believe in him." She treats him, one human being as to another, daughter to father, and he gets this look at her like he's thinking as she leaves. And in the anime, they changed that up. They took out the part where he explains why he called her a fool. They don't have him explain that Captain Ishiro had already submitted all this information. Why is she simply repeating something pointlessly? And it makes his "you fool" seem a bit more cruel and a bit more pointless. And so I did not like that change either. It might have been a bit redundant, given that they show Captain Ishiro gathering the information, but I think leaving out that sentence did negatively affect the overall scene from the Shinamaya perspective. However, none of this negatively impacted my reaction to this episode overall. The beginning of the fight scene between the Director General and Kaiju number 8 was glorious. There were some very interesting animation choices. Instead of going for that crisp, super hyper realistic animation, they're going for the classic art-inspired impressionism. If you look at the Director General's office, there's two big, beautiful paintings of the Suzuku, the big, what do you call it, the bird with the tail. Not parakeet. The mythical bird that's based off of peacock. So you can see that there is this classical theme to the Director General's office. That leads into the scene where he confronts Kaiju number 8. And when Kaiju number 8 just goes completely feral, takes over the body, and starts fighting the Director General, the art style shifts, and you get these black ink swirls coming off of Kaiju number 8's body. This is visually representative of the steam and the energy and probably the flaking dead cells as Kaiju number 8 burns through his massive regeneration energies. But simultaneously, these are the kind of brushstrokes that you will see in a lot of classic Japanese ink and paper artwork. It was just a beautiful addition to the storytelling, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm not now about the Director General himself. On the one hand, he suffers the most from the change in the art style. In the manga, he is rugged. He's got all these sharp lines creasing his face, and all those have been smoothed out. He looks very, very different in the anime from the manga. You don't pay attention to that for too long, but it was kind of shocking at first. Whereas Screamy Science Guy, his loyal attendant, there's almost no difference between Screamy Science Guy in the manga and Screamy Science Guy in the anime. Just like with Reno, it's because they started out with a smoother face, so there wasn't that much to smooth out. But yeah, the Director General's face suffered from the art transition, but his body, the Director General is thick, with 2 C's in this anime. When he's got that battle suit on, he is almost wider than he is tall at that point. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was just the angle we were seeing him at. Maybe it will look different from different angles as we see more of the battle. But the Director General was distinctly wider, apparently at least, in the anime than in the manga. Well, what do you think, my wonderful viewers? I thoroughly enjoyed this chapter, this episode. It got right into my feels, just like the original chapter did. It was very intense, even watching it the second time to get the screen caps for the video. But tell me what you think. Do you think that it was a mistake to not have the scene where Vice Captain Hoshina is standing there shell-shocked, just finishing up watching over Kafka all night? Do you think it was a mistake to replace him with the Vice Director Itami, the bald guy? Please tell me below in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now, and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. 2 worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boomp in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at AuthorBettyAdams.com for a signed copy.